going to talk about the One-Armed Swordsman series from the Shaw Brothers studio from the 60s and 70s. Now, all three of these films were directed by Chang-Chi, and the first two starred Jimmy Wang, and the third one was... give me a second here. Third one was David Chang. Yeah, I'm not good with names. I'm just not good with names. So they were part of a very successful series of films that the director himself wasn't a big fan of, which is kind of astonishing to me because they are by far the most coherent films I've seen from him. Now, Chang-Chi was was a big star of Hong Kong action, like the kind of old-fashioned fighting movies, the kung fu stuff and the sword stuff and things like that. He was like the star of that. He'd done a bunch of films before that, but that's a series, that kind of film. That's the series established him in this kind of what his genre was going to be in the future. Like, he could make successful versions of this kind of story. But the thing is, he got worse as he got older. As he got older and made more films, at least for me, they became less coherent and more, let's throw in lots and lots of action scenes to make up the fact that the drama's kind of lacks. Now, you get some fun action scenes in these films. They're always entertaining, but for me, they kind of were, a lot of the time, they succeeded despite some glaring narrative holes. So I was quite amazed to see that he didn't rate these films, which are far more coherent than his later films, And I think these are the first two are, I think, some of his best work. The third one has its moments, but has some flaws. But I'll start off with the One-Armed Swordsman. The One-Armed Swordsman is a basic thing of revenge, where basically a man tries hard to please his master by being a student. His father was killed and defending his master, so the master said, "I'll teach your son the ways of martial arts, and I'll make sure he's good and he's brought up properly." Years later, the son's doing everything he can to please the master, but a lot of the other students are jealous of him because he's obviously the best in the class. He does not have to study as much as others because he just naturally has it, and he can see things and he can learn skills really quickly. And he also is kind, which is even more annoying to them. So they decide to get revenge on him for that and get him to sneak out to a certain spot so they can beat him up. As the three of them are going to beat him up as a group. Basically, it all goes wrong because he understands that something's coming, but also thinks, I'm sick of this nonsense. I'm sick of trying my best. I'm never going to succeed. So I'm just going to leave. To hell you all, I'm just going to leave. I've got my skills. I can go to elsewhere where I'm actually wanted. Meanwhile, the master of the school wants to leave the school to him, but doesn't realise what's happened. So the fights take place within this forest. The swordsman defeats these enemies without an issue. It's not even a problem for him. But when he's trying to pull up the daughter of the master, he says something that makes her angry, and she chops his arm off because his defense is down, so he's not ready for it. He's in shock. He escapes. He falls off a bridge into this boat going below it, which is owned by this woman who takes him to some people who help heal the wound. So to everyone, he's dead, but he's actually just surviving, but he doesn't know what the purpose of his life is now, because he's no longer his martial arts are no longer useful. He's only one arm. What's a nice idea is, like, what happens to all those guys in martial arts movies, you lose arms and legs. What happens to them? This is a movie about that. So the woman is a farmer. Her father was a martial artist who died when she was young. Her mother has died in the past, left her the land, and she does not like the martial arts world. And he starts to see the logic in what she's saying, and he starts to help her with the farming. He's starting to enjoy it, and he's starting to fall for her, and she becomes his moral rock. He still practices kung fu to learn to make his other arm stronger, and just for self-defense, because he runs into some people early on and they beat him up quite easily because he doesn't have defensive skills. He says, I need some defensive skills. So she's got a book her father had, and he uses that book to learn to build up his left arm and his left side, so he can protect her and him. But he's not going to use it. He's not going to be proactive. It's just like, if worst comes to the worst, I can defend us. But I don't really want to go back to that world because it's a scummy world. Into all of this comes these new villains who are after and want to take over this area of martial arts, kill all the old masters, bring in other students, and this guy's jealous of the Madame Swordsman's old master, who could defeat anybody. But he's found a technique that can defeat all of the old kung fu techniques that this master had built up. So it becomes a thing of him teaching all these other schools who were enemies of the master, and they start to slowly take him out as certain students of the master. Well, he's preparing for his retirement. So all this is build and build and build. You get a few martial arts scenes in here, but basically it's build, a lot of story build, but it's done really well. I mean, like when Swordsman loses his arm, it all takes place in the snow. It looks gorgeous. When summer comes, when he gets some of his strength back, again it looks gorgeous. A lot of time it's sets, but they're done well. And then basically it's the point where the one-armed swordsman becomes entangled into this world and realizes he feels he owes a debt to his master because his master treated him kindly, even if the daughter and the people who bullied him are now in danger. He has to protect them for his master, his old master. And slowly the second half of the movie is him coming back into the martial arts world, and he's the only guy who can really take on these new ruffians. He's the one guy who has the technique, because the one thing he realizes is the technique they're using only works if the sword they're fighting against is a long sword, because these other swords have been adjusted to lock the swords so they can just kill people with a side little knife. So he's the one guy who, because he uses a sword that's a half sword, because the big swords are too heavy for him and it's hard with agility. But he learns how to use a normal sword again, but he finds that the half sword actually he can do a lot more with it, with the balances and things like that. So he's actually the one person who can defeat these guys because of the swords he uses. And it makes for some great action scene in the second half of the movie. It becomes this thing of him versus all these different guys, dealing with people who've wronged him in the past. Not entirely forgiving them, but saying like, this is not about me and you. And also taking on these new villains, and it's just wonderful because you're with the lead character the whole way through. He's had a bad life. None of the stuff that's happened to him he deserves, but he actually has found peace with his woman, and by moving away from his old life, he has found some sort of satisfaction. And when you get to the final fights are brilliant. They're just so well done. They're just so wonderful. They're inventive. There's a lot of villains who you see do variations of fight with different people, but everyone's waiting for the one-armed swordsman versus the big villain. And the villain is in no way a surprise if you watch the film carefully. Now we get to the second one, the Return of the One-Armed Swordsman. Because the One-Armed Swordsman was such a hit, it was like, you have to do a sequel, even though the film was pretty much set up as a standalone. There was not meant to be a sequel to this film. It's like, it told a story. At the end of the film, One-Armed Swordsman walks away with his wife and says, I'm done with this world. I helped you. I've repaid my debt. I'm now debtless to the martial arts world. I'll go and be a farmer somewhere, away from all this nonsense. So he was done. He was happy. And so it was like, we need a sequel. And it was like, well, how do we do a sequel to a film that has an ending? It's like, you don't need a sequel. They found a way, and they made a really good sequel. Now, the story's not as good because there's no development for the lead character beyond the fact that in this one his wife is pregnant, and it takes her a long time to tell him because he's stuck within this other plot line he has to deal with. So it's him learning he's going to have to become a father, so he has to step up a little bit. But that's basically the only through line you've got in this film for his emotional development. It's like pretty much he doesn't want to fight, he's dragged into the fight, and he has to defend these people against these worst people. And that's it. It's a very simple logical situation. But the fights are much better in this film. They're much more numerous. It's a fight movie. You know, where basically these 7 martial arts experts join up and say they're going to take over the entire area as a group. They've got a leader, the unseen swordsman, but he's the kind of guy who is the older guy who can give advice to people and say, you go there, and they all follow him because they all trust him, and then they give orders to the other people, and they're going to take over the entire world of all these old masters, and they're going to kill them all, kill the sons, and basically say the sons. They start by arranging this tournament, so all the masters go to the tournament, and they're all locked up. And it says, if you don't come and cut off your arms and cut off one of your arms and announce fealty to me, we're going to kill your parents. And all these young men are like, what do we do? So they'll go to one-armed swordsman because he was invited to the castle, he didn't go. And when they try to force him to go, he basically kicked the crap out of the people trying to force him. So it's like, I'm not dealing with your nonsense, get lost. I'm retired. So at a certain point, the guys go, we have to convince him some way to do it. So they go to beg him, please help us, because we're inexperienced. We do not know what we're doing. And you do. You've done this stuff before. But as they're talking to him, one of them goes and kidnaps his wife and says, if you don't do it, we're going to, you're not getting your wife back until you help us. Now they go and sort that mess out. But by sorting that mess out, the one-armed swordsman is seen by his enemy to be helping them. So he's now the enemy. So now you have like 7 different villains all coming at him with all their men as he and his group slowly travel to the castle. So you get all these like gimmicky fighters, all with different skills. So the one-armed swordsman has to defeat them in different ways and find different solutions to the problems. So it allows for lots of inventive fights. And you see his tactical skills as he does different areas different ways to deal with different people and their strengths. So even though there's no real emotional development for him till the end of the film, you get to see how good he is at his job and how smart he is. And it really works because it just delivers the idea of, okay, this is not going to be an emotional sequel, but it is going to be an entertaining one, and you're going to see some more skills you never saw as much in the first film. And that's where it delivers. Once you realise that's what the film's going to be, it's really enjoyable. And you get some really great action scenes. It really delivers the action. It's also incredibly nihilistic. So many people you would tag as surviving in a normal film get killed. It's astonishingly nihilistic. I mean, it goes full on Hamlet by the end of it. It really is fairly brutal. But it's very enjoyable. It really is very enjoyable. And the escalation from the different masters and their different students is just wonderful. And eventually you get the unseen swordsman at the end. He's worthy of being the final villain. He really is. He takes it to the next level of brutality, and just full on, I'm going to come for you, I don't care if we kill everybody, I'm going to get you. You know, it's just wonderful. The swordsman still has his wife who's trying to tell him to keep away from that life. Then when she gets kidnapped, she ends up being dragged along with the rest of the story. And she becomes his anchor to survive this thing. And again, it works. It's a really good sequel. The film didn't need a sequel. This is how you do it. It's like, you put him in another situation. Maybe it's not as emotionally developed as the first time round, but it's an interesting situation, so it's interesting to watch him navigate it. So it's one of those things like, yep, this works. You can do more of these if you find a good reason. Although, by the end of this film, it's like, there can't be any more master students left after the first two, because so many people have died in these films. Another massive hit. It's okay. It's time to do the third one-armed swordsman film. Unfortunately, Jimmy Wang, who was the lead actor, left Shaw Brothers in acrimonious ways that left everybody hating each other, and it was like he was banned from working in Hong Kong. It was that traumatic, and they did brought him up to be a star for them, and he was like, at some point, no. Now, here's the thing with Jimmy Wang is, he comes across, and so many things of talking about his films, so many people say he was such a pain in the arse, annoying person. And he made some really good films, but there's been too many people saying how annoying and awful he was for it not to be probably a reality. It's like, it's too often. You've had it too often. Man from Hong Kong, it was like notorious, everyone hated him. These films, it was kind of a case of, he's not like his character at all. His character is noble and decent, and Jimmy Wang apparently wasn't. And he directed his own films and did them well, when armed box and things. These are all good films. But it's one of those things where, enjoy the art. The artist, you want to keep a distance from, you wouldn't want to be stuck in the same room as. It's that kind of thing. So, and a very stoic actor as well. So, he's more of a martial artist and a gymnast than an actual actor. But he understood what his face could do, and he understood what he could project. So, it worked. So, they had a massive hit series with no lead actors. Like, what do? Well, you create a new one-armed swordsman. Get the same director back, but create a new one-armed swordsman. Okay, let's do that. The magic quite wasn't really there, though. It really wasn't. Until the end section where you get, like, the final third, where you get, like, two major battles, basically, of one swordsman against a bunch of people, and then the one-armed swordsman coming out of retirement to kill everybody as revenge for his dead friend. That's where you get all the magic of the film. The first hour, not so much. So the first 10 minutes is where you see the guy before he comes up, loses his arm. It's great fun. He's doing all these things. He's fighting all these villains. And David Cheng is a much better actor than Jimmy Wang. But he's been given less, but he's not as suited to this as Jimmy Wang was, because Jimmy Wang is much more, stoicism will work for this character. In this one, he's got a bit more, David Chang has a bit more emotion, which is good for most films, but for this one, I'm not sure of it quite transferred, because you're meant to put a lot of emotion into the character. And to me, it wasn't quite the same thing, because a new actor, I don't think, and the problem I have with this film is, I don't think they kind of went by convention of, this is what this kind of convention is, and they never adapted the film around the actor as much as they probably should have. So there's that issue. The other main issue is, they have to retell the bloody story again, of him losing his arm, of him having to relearn how to use his other arm, although this time that takes place off screen, but he's still hiding out, he's still trying to be a normal person, and it's like, I've seen this story be done better in the previous film. So you've got a whole hour of, like, self-pity and from a new character, and it's like, we've done this, it's not that interesting anymore. You do get some fun where you get a new character who's like another person who uses the same technique as our hero, and who's very much like a younger version of him, and he's coming in to basically fight the villains there. So him and one-armed swordsman become friends because he recognises him for who he actually is, and slowly that bond, happens. But of course, that's the thing about Chinese Hong Kong films is sometimes a male bond comes across as a really gay bond. Like, this bond feels gayer than a pride march. That's how much hugging and looks in each other's eyes, and they're meant to be portraying deep friendship, but it doesn't come across that way. It comes across as your girlfriend, she's in the way. So that becomes funny, but it's not really meant to be. But it's also the fact is, so you have another character taking over the film to the midsection, and that becomes an issue of, okay, you realise that you can't do this story again and full on again, so you have to find a distraction. But the distraction means it's going two different directions, and neither one's got a chance to really grow. And the film becomes frustrating, and it becomes very small scale until the end, because the Shaw brothers built this massive set, this massive castle at the side of the water. And for this film, it was always going to be used for other films, but it was put in this film's budget because this was a bigger budget film, because it's an one-armed swordsman film, so they could justify it and then use it later on for other stuff. And it's used really well in this film. When one-armed swordsman finally throws away his vow of non-violence and goes after the guys who killed his pal, it gets really good. And the death of his friend is fairly brutal, and just everything in the last third of the movie is just wonderful. It's just great all the way through. There's so many great fight scenes, but it's been a whole hour before that of the stuff you've seen before in the other movies. Because the first two movies, they actually were with one-armed swordsman, and the second one shook it up by giving him a problem that meant that he had to come in. They actually come into the film a lot earlier, and he had to deal with a problem that he'd sort of dealt with the first one, but in a different way. So it freshened it up, so it wasn't quite the same thing anymore, even though it was derivative of the first one, and they were making a sequel, and when there didn't need to be one, but they still managed to take what could have been a disadvantage and make it an advantage. And also this structure of there's 7 different masters of evil, and you have to adjust to each one. And this one, there's no imagination of that. It's almost like, let's just toss this one out. Everyone loves these films, who cares? We're just constant fight scenes and hire a good actor. It's just not the same thing. It just feels like I've seen this film before, but apart from fight scenes, there's just nothing there. So yeah, I was loving this series until the finale, and it was like, this just feels like a low budget rip-off. I'm sure that I know there's some people who love this, who think it's the best for the series, but I cannot disagree more. This one is a fairly tired sequel, and it just all the love and into the action scenes. That's all it was. It was just like, do you have to do these dialogue scenes? Oh crap! That feeling like everyone had done these scenes before. There was nothing there in the actual story. But the first two are amazing. You'd find them all on the Shawscope Volume 3. I wasn't going to bring it back here again to show off again. I've done it once already. But the transfers are great, nice extras, highly recommended, but the first two are really, really good. And I think that the first two are two of my favourites to Shang-Chi. Well, I really like Crippled Avengers from later on, but there's a lot of his other films I'm like enjoying bits. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with some more. Right, bye.